Hello, dear brothers and sisters in Christ. I was watching a movie called Heaven is for Real, and it's actually a story from real life about a pastor who, with his family, experienced near death or something that is similar to that. He has a child, a son, 4 years old, and he is very ill and needs to go to the hospital and have his appendix removed because it has been broken, and he's very ill, almost to the point of dying. And he visits heaven, and he comes back and tells his dad about this experience and that he met Jesus. And a lot of these movies, there are esoteric symbols in it. But I think that those of us who rightly divide the word of truth, we can see the difference between what really points to Jesus and where the devil is trying to lay some traps in the movies to get people to believe in him. And the movie goes on with the pastor going to his church, to his congregation, telling them about this experience, that the boy went to heaven without dying. And it really disturbs the people there. And the pastor comes to that conclusion that it must be either because they are afraid that heaven really exists, or that it's just too hard to imagine that there is a heaven and a hell that is literal. And I wanted to make a video about it, so I tried to find it on Google, and Google has a lot of great sermons written from great pastors. So the only thing that I'm doing is actually sharing what other pastors have been writing. So those are not the words from me, it's from sermons. And I think this one is great because it says evangelism, the time is now. And they say here that Jesus taught the existence of a literal heaven and hell. And I will put this link below for you to read. It says here, Jesus taught the existence of a literal heaven and hell. When a person dies, he goes to heaven or to hell forever. Concerning hell, Jesus said concerning hell, "Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks. For it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to that man through whom the stumbling blocks comes. And if your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, plug it out and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than having 2 eyes to be cast into the fiery hell." Matthew chapter 18, verses 7 through 9. The first mention of hell is in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 22. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and burns to the lowest part of Sheol, and consumes the earth with its yield, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. The first mention of hell in the New Testament is Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. Whoever shall say, "You fool," shall be guilty enough to go into the fire of hell. And this is not from the King James Version. I can hear that. But you can go and look it up in your King James to have the right translation. Hell is a real place, and its location, according to the Bible, is in the center of the earth. Book of Numbers, chapter 16, verses 31 to 33, and Ephesians chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. When Jesus died, he went into hell, where at that time there were two parts, the hell of fire and torment, where the lost go, and paradise, where people went, waiting for Jesus to die on the cross and set them free of their past sins. Not just past sins, but the present and the future sins, so they could enter heaven. No one entered heaven until after Jesus died on the cross. Before that, they went to paradise, also called Abraham's bosom. Now there was, not a parable, a certain rich man and a certain poor man named Lazarus. Now it came about that the poor man died, and he was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died and was buried. And in Hades he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried out and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool off my tongue, for I am in agony in this flame. But Abraham said, Child, remember that during your life you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus bad things. But now he is being comforted here, and you are in agony. And in all these things between us and you, there is a great chasm fixed, in order that those who wish to come over from here to you may not be able, and that none may cross over from there to us. Luke chapter 16, verses 19 and 20, and verses 22 and through 26. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 12, verse 39 and 40, An evil and adulterous generation craves for a sign, and yet no sign shall be given to it, but the sign of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the large fish, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. When Jesus died, he went to hell and set free those in paradise to go to heaven. And I need to pause here because he did not go to hell. He did not go to hell, not as far as I'm rightly dividing on it, because he went to the grave. I'm reading on. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and that is true. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. Matthew chapter 27, verse 50 and 52 and 53. It doesn't say that they entered hell. It said that they were in the tomb. And in the tomb is in the grave. So they were not in hell. Jesus never went to hell. That's a false teaching, as far as I'm concerned. Hell is a real place in the center of the earth. Hell has sides, Isaiah chapter 14, verse 15. Hell has a gate, Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. To open the gate requires keys, which only Jesus has, Revelation chapter 1, verse 18. Hell is a furnace of fire, Matthew chapter 13, verse 42. Hell is a lake of fire and brimstone, Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. People in hell weep and wail from the pain, Matthew chapter 13, verse 42, chapter 22, verse 13. People in hell beg for mercy, Luke chapter 16, verse 24. People in hell pray, but it's too late, Luke chapter 16, verse 27. People in hell see, hear, talk, and remember, Luke chapter 16, verse 19 through 31, and Mark chapter 9, verses 43 through 48. The words in the Hebrew and Greek for hell are the following: Sheol in the Old Testament and Hades in the Greek Septuagint. Old Testament translated into Greek, and in the New Testament, so called because of its devouring and ever-craving character. The Greek Septuagint makes it plain that the Old Testament word Sheol and the New Testament word Hades are one and the same thing. Sheol and Abaddon lie open before Jehovah. How much more the hearts of men, Proverbs chapter 15, verse 11. And you, Capernaum, will not be exalted to heaven, will you? You shall descend to Hades. For if the miracles had occurred in Sodom, which occurred in you, it would have remained to this day. Matthew chapter 11, verse 23. And then they write Abaddon and above Abaddon. But it's meaning destruction, place of destruction, the abyss. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 20. Gehenna. Noach in Hebrew and Jevanan in Greek, meaning Valley of Hinnom. This was a valley south of Jerusalem, once celebrated for the horrid worship of Moloch, and afterwards polluted with every species of filth, as well as the carcasses of animals and dead bodies of criminals, which were burned in order to prevent pestilence and disease. These fires were kept burning continually. Thus, when the Bible refers to hell, it refers to Gehenna, also known as the fires of Tartarus, the place of punishment in Hades. Gehenna is not a compound word. Jaya, H, meaning valley, a low plain, and Hinnom, no, meaning the name of a person of whom nothing is known but that he had a son whose name is not given, from whom a valley that lay on the W and SW of Jerusalem was named, and in which human sacrifices and filth were burned. Joshua chapter 15, verse 8 reads, Then the border went up the valley of Ben Hinnom to the slope of the beside on the south, that is Jerusalem, and the border went up to the top of the mountain which is before the valley of Hinnom to the west, which is at the end of the valley of Rephaim toward the north. Jesus said, "And if your eye causes you to stumble, cast it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than having two eyes, to be cast into Gehenna, where their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched." Mark chapter 9, verses 47 and 48. Jesus taught that hell is a real place where lost souls are, and where they never die for eternity. He further taught that hell is a place of fire, a fiery hell, a fire that is eternal and will never be quenched or put out. The Apostle Paul said about hell, "And these will pay the penalty of eternal destruction away from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power." 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 9. The Apostle Peter described hell as a pit of black darkness. Therefore, it is an eternal fire that does not give off light. Jesus not only described it as outer darkness, but said that there would be that they would be there weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jude in the book of Jude described hell as black darkness and eternal fire. James, the brother of Jesus, in the book of James, states that the tongue will be set on fire by hell. Do we have a book of James? We do. It's just not called the same in Danish. Need to go and look that up. We have a book of James, I know that. Yeah, we do. Just being careful. One man who had a visit of hell said that when a non-saved person dies, he passes through the gates of hell. Deep groans, cries for water are heard. A person hears the horrors of hell, then is taken to an open plain where he sees what he might have enjoyed instead of what they must suffer. Here the person's strength leaves, so he cannot move. They then see in the distance the beautiful city spoken of in the Bible, vast plains of beautiful flowers, the river of life, and the sea of glass. Vast multitudes of angels passing in and out of the city, singing beautiful songs. They see loved ones. On the door through which one enters is written, "This is your doom. Eternity never ends." A man commended to hell described the hell of hell to a visitor. Our miseries in this infernal dungeon are of two sorts, what we have lost and what we undergo, and these I will name under their several heads. First then of what we have lost. Number 1. In this sad, dark abode of misery and sorrow, we have lost the presence of the ever-blessed God. And this is that which makes this dungeon hell. Though we had lost 1,000 worlds, it would not be so much as this one loss. Could but the least glimpse of his favor enter here, we might be happy, but we have lost it to our everlasting woe. Number 2. Here we have likewise lost the company of saints and angels, and in their room have nothing but tormenting devils. They might have been writing on this, but they are not devils in the lake of fire that are tormenting people, because the devils are tormented. They are not the tormentors. Just so we know, to keep it rightly dividing. Number 3, here we have lost heaven too, the seat of blessedness. There is a deep gulf between us and heaven, so that we are shut out from it forever. Those everlasting gates that let the blessed into happiness are now forever shut against us here. Number 4, to make our wretchedness far yet more wretched, we have lost the hope of ever being in a better state, which renders our condition truly hopeless. He that upon earth is the most miserable has yet hope left as a reserve, and therefore it is a common proverb there that were it not for hope, the heart would break. Well, may our hearts break then, since we are here, both without hope and help. This is what we have lost, which, but to think on, is enough to tear and rend and gnaw upon our miserable souls forever. Yet, oh, that this were all! But we have sense of pain as well as loss, and having showed you that we have lost, I am now to show you what we undergo. And this is a very, very long sermon, so I will stick to end this piece of video now, and then I will make number 2 tomorrow, because I need to go to bed and to be very much fresh and alive and vivid tomorrow. Thank you all for listening. God bless you all, and see you in the next video. Bye.